Now we do have views which are specialized on form handling, because it turns out that scenarios where you have a form or where a form is involved always work in kind of the same way. You need to support GET requests to display the form, and you need to support POST requests to then also handle the form submission, validate it, possibly display the form again with form errors, so with validation errors, or to save some data. And because that flow is basically always the same, instead of using this generic view and adding your own get and post methods, there is another specific view you can use. From Django views generic.edit, you can import the form view. And this is a view which is focused on helping you build class-based views that deal with forms. So here, this review form could now inherit from FormView instead of just view. And now we change the logic in there. Now we need to add a couple of properties. Most importantly, the form class property, which lets Django know which form class should be used for rendering the form, for providing the form to the template, and for validating the input data. And in my case, that's the review form, which is being imported from the forms file. We also want to let Django know what our template file is, so which template should be used for rendering the form. Because of course we still have full control over that. We do that with the template name property, which we already know from below. And here it's then reviews/review.html. So this template which we manually rendered before. Now with this information alone, Django is already able to completely replace our get method we had before. Because there we just needed the form to instantiate it and needed the template to render it with that form. And that's simply taken care of by Django now. Now what about form submission though? Django automatically handles this. For that, let's remove or comment out our post method so that this is our entire review view. Quite a bit shorter than it was before, isn't it? Let's now save this and go back to just localhost 8000. Now, as you see, loading the form still works. So that proves that this view is doing its job and it's correctly creating that form and rendering this template. Now let's try to submit this in an invalid way. For this, I'm opening up my DevTools and I'm removing that required tag from this input so that I work my way around that browser validation and I can submit this in an empty state. Otherwise, the browser would block me from doing that. Then I enter some values here and click send. And we automatically get back the form in this invalid state. So just as before again, this all works just as before. We just don't have to write this extra check to validate and manually return back the populated form as we did before. Instead, Django now takes care about this for us. But what if we fill in correct data and I click send? Then it crashes. And it crashes because we need to provide a success URL. We need to let Django know where it should redirect to when the form is submitted successfully, so with valid data. And we do provide that as an extra property. We simply add success URL, and we then simply define the URL we want to redirect to, like thank you, what I did manually here before. With that success URL added, if we try this again and I submit this valid data again, I'm redirected. But there is something interesting happening. If we go to all our reviews now, you see that review which I just added, where I named the user test, is missing here. Now it is missing because out of the box, this form view doesn't know what to do with the submitted data. How would it? It could be anything. Maybe we want to write it to a file. Maybe we want to send an email. Maybe we want to print it to the console. Maybe we want to write it to the database. That's why we need to add an extra method here. the FormValid method. This method will be executed by Django when a valid form is submitted. Now we should return super FormValid here to let the parent class do its thing. For example, redirect us. That's one of the things Django's parent class, this FormView class, will do. But before we return here, we can run our own logic. And you see that we get the form which Django validated and created for us is received as a parameter. Now in this method, we only receive it if it was valid, because this method is named FormValid. So here we can safely call save then, since we're working with a model form here, just as we did it down there in our custom post code, to save that form, and therefore, as you learned, in case of a model form, to save data to the database. And with this little adjustment made, if we now save this, if I go back to that form and I submit it again, I'm back on thank you. But now if we visit /reviews, we see that data here as well. So now that was created, that was added here as well. And that's therefore the form view, which allows us to, again, reduce our code. We don't have to write our own get and post methods. Instead, that is all it takes to create a view which renders a form, validates a form, and then saves a form.